So, you probably saw the coronation of King Charles III, right? It was this incredible spectacle of pomp and circumstance and just wow, so much wealth. But behind all those golden carriages and the glittering jewels, there's a much, much more complicated story. So today, we're going to dive in and unpack the immense and often hidden fortune of the British monarchy.
Okay, so to really get into this, we have to kick things off with a pretty provocative question. It's a question that really challenges that whole fairy tale narrative, and honestly, it forces us to look at all this wealth through a completely different historical lens.
And the real key to all of this is one little word, loot. Now, what's so fascinating here is that this word, which we all use, actually comes from Hindi. It first showed up in English dictionaries right around 1773. And what else was happening then? Well, that's exactly when Britain was expanding its empire in India. It was a word for riches taken in war, and it perfectly sets the stage for where a huge part of this story really begins. All right, first things first. Let's just try to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the royal family's wealth today. I mean, it's a fortune that funds a lifestyle that's pretty hard to even imagine. We're talking about a combined net worth estimated to be around $28 billion. And, that's probably on the low end. It's such a massive number, it's almost meaningless. So to put it in perspective, let's just look at one single event. Just think about this. Way back in 1981, the wedding of Prince Charles and Lady Diana cost what would be about $110 million today. I mean, Diana's dress alone had 10,000 pearls on it. 10,000! This was way more than just a wedding. It was a global announcement of their incredible financial power. So the big question is, where does all this cash actually come from? It's not like they're just getting a paycheck. The royal finances are actually this really complex web, and the money flows in from three main sources.
Okay, so it breaks down into three main buckets. First, you've got personal inheritance. That's private wealth passed down through generations. Second is something called the privy purse, which is basically income from these huge estates known as duchies. And third, we have the most public and definitely the most controversial source, the sovereign grant.
So you can think of the sovereign grant as kind of like the monarchy's official expense account. It's funded by profits from the crown estate, which is this giant $20 billion portfolio of properties. The whole arrangement goes back to King George III in 1760. He basically handed over control of the estate to the government, and in return, he and every monarch since gets a piece of the profits. And this chart here really breaks it down for you. The UK Treasury gets the lion's share, 85% of the revenue, and the royal family gets the other 15%. Now, this isn't just pocket money, right? It's supposed to be for official duties, stuff like hosting world leaders, official travel, keeping the palaces running, and paying all the staff. But as you can imagine, this public funding thing is, well, it's a huge point of debate. Take this, for example. When Windsor Castle had that massive fire in 1992, the repairs cost £36 million. And guess who picked up the tab? Yep, the British taxpayers. Why? Because it turns out the royals didn't have fire insurance on the place. So all of this debate really brings up a bigger question. In this day and age, in a modern democracy, what's the actual point of a monarchy? Well, the answer seems to have shifted from ruling to, well, branding. See, way back when, the crown had actual political muscle. They made policy decisions. But today, the UK is a parliamentary democracy. The monarch is a ceremonial head of state. Their job isn't to govern, it's to be a symbol for the nation. They've basically become a brand, a living, breathing billion-dollar brand. And wow, is it a powerful brand? Just look at Harry and Meghan's wedding in 2018. The whole thing cost around $43 million. But look at the return. It pulled in an estimated $1 billion in tourism and merchandise for the UK. That's the economic power of the royal brand right there in black and white. But here's the thing. This brand and all the money that keeps it going, it didn't just appear out of nowhere. And it certainly wasn't built peacefully. To really find the source of this incredible fortune, we have to step back into the long shadow of the British Empire. Just take a look at this chart of the UK's economy. See that line? It just explodes, goes almost vertical starting in the 1800s. So what else was happening right then? Well, Britain was busy colonizing the entire world. The timing isn't a coincidence. The resources from the empire directly fueled Britain's massive economic boom. You often hear this argument that Britain gave its colonies gifts, right? Like railways. But let's break that down. The famous railways in India, they were built using Indian money
and Indian labor. Then the Indian people were taxed just to use them. And get this, during World War II, a lot of those same tracks were ripped up, melted down, and used to help the British war effort. So, was it a gift? Or was it just a very clever system of extraction?
And maybe the most obvious symbols of all are the incredible treasures that are still in Britain today. The Koh-i-Noor diamond from India, the Great Star of Africa diamond from South Africa, the Elgin marbles from Greece. These aren't just pretty artifacts. They are deeply contested pieces of history, the Koh-i-Noor, for example. Which means that today, if you're from India, you have to fly to London and buy a ticket to see a priceless piece of your own heritage. There's this amazing quote from Queen Elizabeth herself. She was talking about the imperial state crown, the really famous one, and she said it was so heavy it was impossible to wear for very long. And when you look at all the jewels in it and you know where they came from, you have to wonder, was she just talking about the physical weight, or was it something more, the symbolic weight of all that history? Okay, so this really gets to the heart of it all, doesn't it? Because this history, the story of the empire and where all this wealth came from, is seen in two totally profoundly different ways. On one hand, for Britain, this history is a glorious past. It's the foundation of that billion-dollar brand we talked about, something that fuels tourism and a real sense of national pride. But then you look at it from the other side, from the perspective of the former colonies. And for them, it's a painful history of exploitation, of extraction, a past that's left economic and cultural scars that are still felt today. Look, at the end of the day, digging into this complex history isn't really about pointing fingers or assigning blame. It's about having the courage to acknowledge the whole story. Because, as the saying goes, if you forget your history, you can never really move forward. And all of this leaves us with one last, really important question to think about. When we watch those grand royal weddings or those magnificent coronations, what is it exactly that we're celebrating? Are we celebrating a nation's identity? Or are we celebrating the stunning and lasting legacy of an empire that was, in many ways, built on loot? It's a question we're thinking about.